Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is a video about why I don't do my to-back or not-to-back series anymore. And a little bit about the history of how it came to started, some of the evolution and progression over time, where it is right now, and what the future might hold for it. It's also a two-parter video. I don't know which video goes up first and how far apart these videos are. Maybe I'll try to do them the same week, who knows. But there's also a video about my evolution and progression around big box games, campaign games, all the glorious bling that's present in a CMON Awaken Realms campaign. CMON having gone the way of the dodo for right now, the way of the temporarily extinct dodo, not quite unsure what the future holds. Either way, that's going to be a different video, you can check that out, but both of them to a certain extent are representative of the changes in me and the types of content I do and the types of games I play and the things I do over time. Which is fair, you know, people change over time, things change over time, life is not this static thing, it's always changing and evolving. Where I am in the hobby has constantly changed over time, and I don't just mean the things I do in relation to the hobby, because that's also changed over time. I even just mean like the level to which I am obsessed with different board games, and different types of board games, and genres, and how much I'm playing, and how much I'm playing solo, online. Those things have all changed over time. This video is about to-back or not to-back. Before we dive further into this video, this channel is sponsored by Allplay. Speaking of to-back or not to-back, Allplay runs crowdfunding campaigns on a regular basis for a variety of crowdfunding campaigns. I would tell you which one is active right now, but I don't know when this video goes up, so I can't do that. I can tell you to head over to allplay.com to check out a variety of their games. If you missed them on crowdfunding, that's a great way to get a hold of them, as well as games from the various partner publishers that they work with. Allplay.com, link down below. And with that, to-back or not to-back. So, when the channel first started, it started with a video on the series, a little Hello World video of me with my cell phone camera, a different house before I moved, but just in the basement of my house, just, you know, being, hey, I'm starting a YouTube channel. And that was kind of it. Then I did a few videos here and there. I dabbled in like one or two reviews, barely reviews, mostly me just talking about a game with not even the game on the table. I know people like to complain about no B-roll. Forget no B-roll. I didn't have the game set up in the slightest. It would just be like, hey, I played a game. Here's my thoughts, hope you enjoy. I did that like 2 times maybe. I did like Horrified, I did more than 2 times. I did Horrified, I did Airland and Sea, I did Cthulhu Death May Die, and Tariffs Adventures. Those are all 4 games that I happened to play when I first started doing YouTube videos that all struck me in different ways. But shortly along the journey, I don't know exactly when, I did a lot of topical stuff, but shortly along that journey, I did a video covering why I'm not backing Marvel United. This is when Marvel United first came up, okay? First came out, speaking of CMON, speaking of, like, you know, the past and all that. I did a video, why I'm not backing Marvel United. And it blew up. It completely blew up. Now, I, at the time, and things have changed over time because of the nature of crowdfunding, which is a big part of this, where this video is going to go. But at the time, I used to back a lot more. And I backed things with a mindfulness of, does it make sense to back this game? Should I get this on crowdfunding, as opposed to waiting to get it on the secondhand market or retail? Where is the most efficient to get it? Because things come out later, and sometimes they're cheaper. Sometimes the differences of what you get on crowdfunding are or aren't worth it. Sometimes the games might not be cheaper in terms of if you wanted that deluxe edition, but you can get them on the secondhand market cheaply enough because they don't hold their value. This particular publisher, that game might cost $100, and people frequently sell it for $50 to $60 to $70 down the road. Why back it now? Why tie up money for a year and a half? Why put that risk incentive aspect there? Just wait down the road and get it then. This is how I backed all crowdfunding campaigns. I backed them with the lens and a mindfulness as to, does it make sense to back them? And so when I did a video covering why I'm not backing Marvel United, or was it why I am backing Marvel United? I must have been why I am backing Marvel United, because I did back Marvel United. It must have been why I am. That's what it was. I think it was why I did back Marvel United. But I did a video about that. I think a big part of that video was I wasn't sure about the gameplay. I had seen the initial announcement of Marvel United. I was very excited for it, but then they revealed more, and I was like, this is it? This is all there is. It's a very light-looking game. It doesn't look like I might be the target audience for it. Fun fact, by the way, I love Marvel United. It's so much fun. It definitely is on the lighter side, but I do very much enjoy playing Marvel United. And at the time, the biggest reason I gave was I still am optimistic that this has a place in my collection. Whether for me, my game group, my kids, don't know. But at the end of the day, even if it isn't a game that's for me, Marvel CMON campaigns hold their value. When you back a CMON campaign, you can sell it for more than what you paid for it. There's some asterisks, some caveats. How far down the road are you? There was like one exception. Besiege was one that didn't really hold its value, but most of them did. For the most part, though, it was a safe bet. Back it, play it. If you don't like it, you can move on from it. And that resonated with a lot of people. It resonated with a lot of people about this idea of it wasn't just about what is this game, there was a degree of financial advice, so to speak. Does it make sense to get this game? Something that wasn't really being done in the space. And it wasn't something that I had planned around, it was just something that was, I don't know, true to my heart. That might be there, that sounds too passionate. It was the way I looked at things. And I just did a video talking about a campaign, the way I looked at things, and there was clearly a demand for it. It was, I think the second video I got that like crossed 3,000 views was the second video that blew up, so to speak. And I did it a few more times. I don't remember all the campaigns at the time. I want to say I did it for Wonderland's War. I don't remember what else. I did it for a few campaigns here or there, covering this kind of like, oh, look, there's clearly a demand for this kind of content. Let me talk about games from the viewpoint, from the mindfulness of, should you back this thing? Does it make financial sense? Nothing to do with whether the game is good or not. Assume you want it, or assume you're on the fence. Either way, what makes sense to do? Eventually, I started doing a series where I covered a bunch of games at once that I was excited about. I don't think I called it to back or not to back at first. I'd have to go back and look at the first videos in the series. I don't even remember. But it wasn't really a planned series. It was like, hey, you know, I'm going to talk about 4 games in one video today. And then I did that. And then 3 weeks later, I do another one talking about 7 games in one video. And then 2 weeks later, I do another one talking about 4 games. And then that started to realize that instead of doing this on an unplanned basis, maybe I should start just doing a weekly series. To back or not to back. Again, I don't remember at what point it was called that, but it certainly, the name, maybe it was the first video, I don't know, I'd have to go look. But I started making it a weekly series. Instead of trying to just cover things whenever the mood struck me, I was going to do a regular series every single week where I talked about the campaigns out there. This is a problem for me, by the way. Unrelated to the point of this video, this caused me to start backing more games. Games that I hadn't looked into, because at first this was driven purely by the games I was interested in. Nothing to do with what's on crowdfunding, it was the games I was interested in. But over time, I started trying to research games because it was helpful for the series. And that meant I started looking into things that I wasn't interested in, and I would back things that I wasn't interested in before, because by looking into it, I was like, you know what, honestly, it looks like I'll probably hold this value, I am kind of interested in, I'd back it. There was a point in time where I was backing, I don't know, 8 to 12 games a month, which is not something that is the most financially sound decision to make, especially because I wouldn't be playing them at the same rate. Don't get me wrong, I play more than 8 to 12 new games a month now, but, okay, well, let's not get sidetracked by two things. I play enough games, I wouldn't even be playing all the games I was backing. They're all big box experiences, not smaller, easier to table, lots of them with big box experiences, but I started backing a lot more games. I started covering the Should You Back It. At one point I had a series over on my Patreon, Ko-Fi, and all that called Unfair and Unbalanced. Over the years I added that. Unfair and Unbalanced was a much harsher take. Same exact information was there, but instead of leaning towards like, here are your, reasons to consider it, it leaned heavily into reasons not to consider it, well above just the value consideration, but even just the mindfulness of, okay, great, doesn't matter if it'll hold its value. If it's going to be a paperweight on your shelf, it doesn't help anyone. The game probably isn't good. Why are you considering this? So it was a much harsher look, kind of catered to being like, hey, let's really try to drive into the anti-FOMO as much as possible. That was Unfair and Unbalanced. Like the tagline was like, hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Welcome to Unfair and Unbalanced, where crowdfunding is full of FOMO, and we are here to be the counter FOMO. Crowdfunding wants to give you all the reasons to back. I'm going to give you all the reasons not to back. It was sort of adjacent to what Chris George, Room and Board, does on his channel, but really leaning into like, maybe one campaign a week would get a pass. The rest would be like, here's every reason to consider not doing. But again, it wasn't the balanced approach. I specifically said that. It was not a fair and balanced approach. It was a specifically do not back approach. The fair and balanced was left for a to back or not to back. But the whole point of to back or not to back, the whole reason I started doing it, was the financial side of things. Does it make sense to back things? The problem is times changed. Times changed a lot. Early on in my YouTube career, I did a video called why isn't crowdfunding a good deal anymore? Something like that. Something along those lines. I'll link to it down below if I remember. It was this video basically saying, hey, the deals aren't the way they used to be. This was like 5 years ago. The deals have gotten so much worse. But it was basically talking about how crowdfunding has shifted, and more things aren't worth backing. And I would guess, this is a rough guess, don't hold me to it, I would guess at the time I did that video, I felt like maybe a quarter of the campaigns were worth backing. That, when I said, why isn't crowdfunding a good deal anymore, I felt like a quarter of the campaigns were worth backing. The rest were relying on FOMO and uncertainty and just cult of the new. Because there are many reasons to back a campaign. There are many reasons to this. Supporting the creator, there's definitely a reason. The FOMO, the uncertainty, just I want this, I don't care what it costs, I don't care what it'll cost later, I just want to get it now, sure. Getting it earlier, that's a reason. Not a reason I care about, but it is a reason. If you get it earlier than other people and you really need to have it now, sure. Like right now, I'm currently, I was just talking to a friend, I'm currently eyeing a game called Saros on PS5 that just came out. It's like $70, and I'm like, why? Why would I back this? I have like 20 games I'm trying to play on PS5 that I haven't gotten to. I'm in the middle of finishing Miles Morales. I want to play Spider-Man 2. Why would I spend $70 in this game? Wait till it's on sale. I have a backlog. You can always buy the new thing at the highest price, or you can always be playing 6 to 12 to 2 years behind, and you're totally fine. Except when it comes to multiplayer games, different conversation. Anyways, point is, I don't care about getting things first. Usually I can be like, whatever. I'll play the things that I have, and I'll get to those things later. So getting it first can be a reason, not a reason for me. Exclusive content, that's a reason, but keep in mind, exclusive content only factors into how well the game is going to be available on the secondhand market as well. If your game is going to be constantly sold, used for half the price, that exclusive content is not exclusive, people can get their hands on it. But some people don't want to dabble in the secondhand market. Some people only want to get things brand new. There's many reasons and considerations as to why to get a game. At the time, though, I felt that if your concern is what's the best deal, what makes the most sense, if your concern was the kind of the trade-off of I as a creator am getting your money a year in advance, a year and a half, 2 years in advance, you're doing so with a little bit of risk. Therefore, you're going to pay for something and I'll give you a better value in exchange, because often you're paying a higher price as well. You're paying a higher price than the retail margins. You're also paying for shipping as opposed to getting free shipping. There's all these considerations. You as the publisher should be giving backers a good deal as to why they should get it now in crowdfunding. I still believe in that, by the way. I still believe that if you as a publisher aren't giving the backers a reason why now is the best time to get your thing, then the backers shouldn't get that thing now. By the way, fun fact, I'm also CMO of GameFound. Everything I say stands. Okay, I still believe this firmly. Creators can do what they want, and backers can do what they want. But I also believe that as a backer, I don't owe the creator anything, and if the creator wants me to spend money on the thing, they should be a financial incentive to do so as opposed to just waiting and getting it down the road. That's what I believe, generally. Again, I believe creators can do what they want. I believe backers should do what they want. Anyways, that was 5 years ago. I already said, why isn't crowdfunding a good deal anymore? Was this pre-COVID? It must have been pre-COVID. It must have been. The timeline of this video must have been pre-COVID, at least being popular, so to speak. Popular is the wrong terminology. Drastic. Then COVID happened. And things kind of got crazy. Crowdfunding very briefly went through like a very temporary, what's the story? What's the pause? Is the world still alive? Are people spending money on board games? Are we sure we can deliver these board games? Everything went completely crazy as far as to the uncertainty. But very quickly, crowdfunding powered through COVID in the sense that what happened is, as people had less discretionary spending going towards public events, movie theaters, all these other things that you suddenly couldn't do. You want to go on a cruise this year? You can't. COVID's a thing and no one's going on cruises. People had extra money that was being pivoted away from certain kinds of activities and now had room for more activities. Board games in general saw a spurt during COVID and there was an increase in crowdfunding. But that was at first. Then it came time to deliver things. And the problem is there are constant long-term effects of COVID in terms of, well, health benefits, but health effects, not benefits, but also the industry and the state of the world. Shipping was a big deal. Many of you will remember the shipping container crises where publishers were like, hey, you know those containers that used to cost us $4,000 to ship? Right now they're $25,000 to ship, and we didn't plan for that. So A, can you give us extra money? B, we're going to try to ship it at this exact window in time when things may have dropped down from $25,000 to $18,000. It's still much more expensive than it used to be, but it's marginally cheaper. Everything was completely crazy. Lots of publishers were asking for money to balance the fact that they didn't account for this. And lots of backers are very understanding because, hey, you're running a business and you should, like, your mistakes aren't our fault. Also, like, global pandemic and something that hasn't happened in a very long time. No, like, it goes under the definition of acts of God, okay? It goes under that. No one could have planned for this. Lots of backers were understanding. But what we did find out during COVID and during the shipping crisis is that the board game industry was relying on margins that were too thin. It was relying on margins that did not allow for a lot of flexibility. And one of the ways you found this out is when there were limited shipping containers available, and when you had to pay $25,000 to get access to one of the shipping containers, there were lots of industries that were paying those prices because their margins could bear it. We are making computer chips. We want to sell computer chips. We will pay $25,000 because we're still making plenty of money. We're just making slightly less money. Versus a lot of board game creators were like, if I pay that $25,000 per container and I have to do 4 containers, that's $100,000. I didn't budget for that. I don't have the margins for it. A lot of board game creators couldn't make money on those margins compared with a lot of other industries where they simply made less money on those margins. And that changed the nature of crowdfunding to a large extent. This was a continuous long tail effect. It had an effect on the initial shipping container prices. There was a change laid down the road where the final destination, that's not called, it's called something else. There's a term for it. Last call, something, final call, I don't know, whatever. There's a term in shipping for like the final stretch, but that also had an increase in price. There was a lot of increase in prices, and these things had to be factored into the nature of crowdfunding going forward. Which meant as crowdfunding went on, the deals got worse. This is after my why isn't crowdfunding a good deal conversation. The deals got worse. It became harder to find things that were worth paying for. And especially during COVID, there was also the additional factor of the things I might have said in a video a year ago about whether this is or isn't worth getting, that kind of fell apart when a year later, the prices might have ballooned. You might have paid more for it. A publisher might have gone under. Information that I was relying on at the time and the nature of the act of God and all that and the state of the world meant that a lot of things I said kind of were a little bit less certain. Campaigns that I said were worth backing weren't worth backing. Campaigns I said weren't worth backing were worth backing because they may have kept that price the same for you, but then raised the final MSRP on the game because they want to respect the backers, but then they raise the final MSRP. Information is only my information is only as good as the reliability of the industry until this point, and COVID kind of showed that it wasn't reliable. That was the first blip in my Too Back or Not to Back series. I still did it, but that was the first blip of, I don't know what to say anymore. Fast forward a few years later, because the world kind of settled down, the after effects of COVID are still present in our industry, in the world, all those things are present, but the world kind of settled back to at least a normal pace. And then in 2025, tariffs happened. Now, tariffs had happened in Trump's first term, but tariffs really happened in 2025. There was a much bigger increase to the impact of the board game space in a way that made publishers unable to predict what your game can and should cost. Unable to predict around what they're going to have to charge backers, in 3 months, in 6 months, when tariffs were constantly changing to the point that there was no predictability. Oh, tariffs are 35%, now they're 50%, now they're 104%, they might go back down to 35%, they might go back down to 50%, they might go up to 200%. It was complete chaos as far as the predictability of what the state of the world is going to be, what the price is going to be, what your price as a backer is going to be, what the final price once it lands is going to be. Tariffs kind of threw another wrench into this. This is after things had settled down. So we went from complete instability to settled down but higher prices, less good deals. I'd say, again, if I'm giving rough estimates, I'd say if it was 1 out of every 4 campaigns was a good deal, after COVID, it might have been 1 out of every 10. Like, genuinely, 1 out of every 10 campaigns was a good deal, was worth backing. The rest, wait for retail, wait for retail, wait for the second market, wait for retail, second market, retail. Oh, look, there's a CMON campaign, back that. Also, fun fact, in a year or two, we'll find out that they're going through financial troubles and I can't deliver everything. So, it's chaos. Tariffs, to me, was the final straw. The Too Back or Not to Back series, after Tariffs, I kind of started talking about the games without giving the financial aspect to it. The financial research, the should you back this, does it make sense to back this? And the tricky part here is along the way, there have always been people, my initial series of Too Back or Not to Back started because people latched on to something that wasn't being done elsewhere. Doesn't make sense to back this campaign. Along the way, there are many people who came not for that, but for an overview of the game. An overview. What's this campaign about? What's going on? What's happening here? And they didn't care about the financial, should you back it. But there are many people who did. Whenever I would admit that information, I'd have people who didn't care at all, and I'd have people who'd be like, well, that's why I watch your video. And to me, the thing that I always found the most interesting, the thing that is most personal, I guess, is I always felt that was the value I added. Further context, way back when, is I started in the board game space, so to speak, as far as running a used game store, and I was very aware of the secondhand market when it came to used games, including crowdfunding games. So I was walking into this from a knowledge of used games. And that was a lot of the background I had for this. It was my knowledge of the space combined with my personal reasons why I back things or not. And that's what started the channel series. Omitting the information, not covering should you back it or should you not, felt like I was doing half the job. It felt like I wasn't adding my spin on things, my value add. There's lots of channels that cover crowdfunding. Dice Tower covers it, Crowd Surfing, Chris George still covers it, Leisure Games covers it. There's a lot of people who still cover the crowdfunding series out there, and there's always going to be new content creators covering things, desperate to, like, crowdfunding is always where their attention is, so it's very easy for new content creators to kind of fall into that side of things. Even as others, move out of the space or stop. King of Average, who I used to watch when I first got into the space, barely covers it nowadays. I stopped covering it. Shelf Clutter disappeared from the space. There's always content creators moving in and out of both the space in general, as well as the things they cover. But for me, when I stopped covering the value aspect of it, it was a big time savings. Another factor to all of this is I was always giving up my Sundays to cover Two Back Not To Back. Two Back Not To Back went up on Monday, and every single Sunday I spent 8 hours researching crowdfunding campaigns. And I don't mind putting work into videos. I do a lot of videos every week. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but it certainly was a lot more mental work to give up, one of my weekend days to do all this research. And that was an additional factor for sure. And so when the tariff situation happened, I almost latched on to, okay, great, I can't predictably talk about value anyway. That was the biggest component of research I was doing, because I would look into, there's lots of research that went into this. I would look into that creator. I would look into every single campaign that creator has done. I would look into how their games have been received by the public, what the general, average sale price of those campaigns had been relative to the backing aspect. I would look at the individual campaign, look at the price point, kind of get a gauge or sense of how these kinds of games had done, because even though a creator has a pattern, individual games can be different. I'd have to look through the pledge levels, break those down as well. I wouldn't necessarily cover every pledge level, but I want to get a general sense. Which pledge level makes the most sense to get, where you're getting the most bang for your buck, and which things can you possibly get later, which things you might not even need. I tried to do a lot of research into these, and that's on top of finding out what the game is in the first place. When I shifted to covering just the campaigns and cutting out the financial aspect of should you back it or not, I'd say I probably dropped to a third of the time. My 8-hour-a-day Sundays to cover all the crowdfunding campaigns dropped to like 3, maybe 4, but 3 hours of research. I had to learn the campaign, but I didn't have to learn all the other things. But I just felt like the reason I was adding value was because I was talking about it from the stance. And while tariffs were the final straw, for a long time before tariffs, I was already beginning to feel that whereas once upon a time I was telling you, hey, let's cover 16 campaigns and 4 of them are worth backing. That feels like interesting information to me. Whereas if I cover 16 campaigns and 1 of them is worth backing, that just feels like my general opinion is don't back things. Which, by the way, my general opinion is don't back things. Caveat. My general opinion is if you are backing it with a mindfulness and a caring about what makes the most sense from a financial perspective, don't back things. If you're backing them because you have FOMO and you just don't want to have to deal with the thought process around getting the game later or now, sure, back them. If you're backing them because you want to support the creator or get the game earlier, sure, back them. If you don't like buying things used, sure, back them. There's still considerations as to why you might want to back things, but if you are cost conscious and if you do care about whether your game that you're backing today is going to be worth what you paid for it when it comes time to possibly sell or trade it down the road, if you care about that side of the hobby, if you're trying to min-max your dollar even as you min-max your points, then I don't think you should back most crowdfunding campaigns. Yes, once again, I'm CMO of GameFound. Everything I say is still true. When it came to tariffs, it felt like the final straw for me. It felt like I couldn't predict anything. How could I possibly predict things? The creators don't know what they're going to charge you. How can I tell you if it's a good deal or not? And while tariffs have stabilized, I say stabilized, even as I'm filming this, they just issued like announcements that they're going to be doing like refunds to a lot of the creators who have since charged you more money, but now the creators between a rock and a hard place because some backers will be like, I paid you more because you had to and now you get the money back. How do you run a business? How do you function? It's crazy. The world is crazy. But I couldn't do predictive videos around whether something was worth backing on top of the fact that I already felt most things weren't worth backing. And so I tried to pivot the series at first, and over time I found that while it was doable to pivot the series, my sense of joy and personal pride in it was gone. My sense of here's why I do it to add my unique voice to the space was gone. And there's still reasons to do it. There's still reasons to be mindful. It's still good for views. It's great for views. Covering crowdfunding is great for views. But if I'm chasing something because of the views, my heart's not in it. if I'm chasing something because I think I can add value, that's when I like doing things. I don't like just doing things because it's good for the algorithm. I don't like doing things because of that. I like doing things because I think it's adding value to the space in some way, shape, or form. And so I was starting to be burnt out by the series. It was starting to feel like the thing I had to do and not the thing I got to do. For 6 years, I got to do it. For the last 6 months, I felt I had to do it. And that led to burnout. And that led to me saying eventually that I was no longer going to try to do it. Since then, it's been like 6 months since I made that decision. Since then, I still have that feeling of potentially wanting to bring it back. And I'm not saying it's gone forever. It's not necessarily. The way it is right now, to back or not to back, I feel that has to be gone forever. I still don't feel like I can give a realistic value determination with the state of the world. And just as importantly, I feel like most campaigns aren't worth backing even if I did. So if that's your main consideration, I don't think it's worth bringing it back for that. But I've debated possibly doing it live, possibly covering the most interesting crowdfunding campaigns. That's another thing. A big part of it is I would cover crowdfunding campaigns I wasn't personally interested in because others were interested in them. But that felt more into that work aspect of things, that sense of pressure, a sense of having to, and not sense of getting to. I still want to bring it back. It's 2026 right now. In fact, it's May 2026 right now when I'm filming this. No idea when this video goes up. My videos go into a little vault, and sometimes they go up 2 days later, sometimes they go up 6 months later. But it's currently May of 2026. I have wrestled recently with doing a live coverage of the most interesting crowdfunding campaigns, the ones that I'm most compelled by in some way, shape, or form. But if I do bring it back, I want to make sure I'm doing so genuinely with as much either whatever I can personally add to the conversation or just interest in the games themselves. I need it to be something that feels right and not something that I bring back just to stop doing again, which might happen. That is always a possibility. I cannot guarantee it won't, because I am very mindful of not being burnt out on YouTube in general, and that means not pushing myself to do things that feel like work. So I am fully prepared to stop doing anything if it feels like too much. But I want to at least be confident there's a good chance if I start the series again. And so here's where we are. I don't do to back or not to back because of a combination of 3 things. Number 1, I think most crowdfunding campaigns aren't worth backing from a financial perspective. Number 2, I guess 4 things. Number 2, the state of the world makes it very hard to give any predictive answers, even for those few that might have been worth backing. Number 3 is I think that talking about whether a campaign is worth backing is my primary voice that I added to the space. And number 4 is I like my Sundays, and doing the series on Monday meant that I was giving up part of my weekend to cover it all. Number 4 is solvable by shifting the day. That's something I've already thought of. The other 3 are more the things I need to work around. Anyways, that's how I started. That's what happened over time. That's where things are now, and that's where things might go in the future. Until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this history, behind the scenes, and all that. And as always, I hope you have a good one.